is our
Yes.
job. Can we go to the practical part, Bogdan? Because
yes.
First of all, the practical part, it's a legacy code from famous framework that I use in my project, which is NetFox, which like Proxyman, it's a sniffer of API calls, etc. It's a great project. First of all, it's a great project with a great developer, great contributor around the world. It's not now maintained. I think since 2 years or 3 years, it's not maintained. And we have choose this code not to say that because it's bad. This is
Yes.
we are that it's important for us, me and Bogdan, to say that we develop code. It's much we have developed me and him code which is not much better than this code that we
Yes.
to be honest.
Yes.
And it's not to say that we are humble, not arrogant. This is the reality.
Yes. That's
The
it.
code, it's good. We try to improve this code with Bogdan. Try to make to discover real example of code smells. A lot lack of cohesion, a lot of coupling in the code. How to detect dependency, some things that Bogdan will show you to finally have a respectable code. We will focus now to controller, which is the text view controller in the framework, in the
Yes.
NetFox framework.
It's actually in the demo app,
Yes,
right?
section in the demo to be yes. Thank you, Bogdan, to rectify me and to correct me in this. It's important to say. I let you go, Bogdan, with
Sure.
our with people that listen and watch us.
Yeah, and let's do like some kind of a pair programming. So
Yes, I'm with you.
feel free
Yes.
to jump in and
Yes.
yeah. So as Valid said, this is an example from a demo app. So we just wanted to show something that was that we could show. So some open source code and that is small enough to show and explain, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but also it has some of the smells we talked about, so then we can explain how to deal with that. And like Valid said, I've written code like this. I thought it's good. It's not that it's not good, is that we can make it better and we can simplify it. And it's just looking at code and understanding where problems can appear. So we are looking at a 60 lines of code view controller, which is not a lot. But for this example, we will see some of the things which I think are mixed concerns here, and things that stand against testability. So yeah, let's explain first. So this project has a storyboard, and it has a few. So it's basically a tab bar application with a few tabs, and we're just looking at the text one, this one. So which has basically a text view. It has a button, and so the tab bar item. Sorry, so we don't care about this. Basically, we have two UI views, a button and a text view. And what the application does, let me see. So basically the tab is selected, and if we hit tell me a joke, it goes to an API which returns a random Chuck Norris joke.
Yes.
Right. This one's pretty good. So
yes.
Okay. So the view controller backing this, this is the test, is this one, right? So it's called text view controller. It has an outlet, a text view. It has an IB action, which is hooked to the tell me a joke button. And it's using URL session to make a data task request to this API, which I mentioned, random check notice jokes.
Yes.
Parse the response or the error over
Yes.
here. And then there's this handle completion function, which makes sure we call the update on the main queue. And if it's an error, we log it. Otherwise, if we get some data here, we parse it using JSON serialization, which is a bit, I wouldn't say deprecated, but I think people nowadays use more of the codable approach for JSON
for parsing, yes,
decoding. And then we just update the text view text with the message. So it's pretty straightforward. And here we have some method which I think it's not needed, but it's probably some reminiscence from an older implementation where we basically act as the URL session delegate, and if we receive an authentication challenge, we respond with this response with this template use credential. But I don't think this is needed. So again, very small code declaration. Why is this an example? Why is this not a good code to have?
Yes.
Well, first of all, because naming is a bit misleading, I think. So we have a text view controller. You might say that's an okay name. We could go with a more concrete name. So it can be like a, I don't know, joke view controller or something like that.
Yes, because it's
text view, it's telling the
generic,
user of the class how is the class doing it.
Yes.
From a API perspective, I wouldn't care if you use a text view, if you use a stack view, if you use a collection view, if you use Swift UI. Like I don't really care if I use this controller. I just want to use it, right? So to me, it would be important to name this class in a way that a client can know that it's a controller that basically can have a joke displayed, a random joke, and I can change the joke with a button. Right?
Yes. Maybe after that we will make this joke view controller agnostic from this API when we make the pass the URL. But
yes,
from the first baby steps in refactoring, when I save, I see, okay, maybe I should rename this to make more context for my my view controller. It helped me to have information from the joke. At this moment, maybe I try to rename this. It's a little baby step in the yes.
So since this is a safe refactoring, we can do it Xcode. I'm just gonna do rename here, and let's do joke view controller, if that's okay. And I have here a test file, and I will rename the test file as well, and I'll explain. Basically it's just a very basic setup for testing.
Yes.
But going back to the example, so next thing I notice, and I'm just gonna go through a few of these, is all these properties, the outlet and these two, the URL session and the data tasks, are not private. So this means that encapsulation is not properly applied here. And why this is a problem is because a user of the joke view controller class can get into the details and start messing with things, and we don't want that. I don't want someone else coming in and say, hey, joke view controller instance text view text equals random something, right? That is a risk I'm taking by exposing this property. Also, I'm exposing these var properties so somebody can, I don't know, create a data task or cancel my data task or whatever. So this is just inviting problems. So when we make this private, we're basically preventing the outside world from interfering with the internal state of the object. And this is one of the things which I pay a lot of attention to, is what is the API, what is the public interface that I am exposing to other clients, to the clients of the type, right? So I will just make this private because I don't want anyone to access these.
Yes.
Right? We display the controller has a button, we tap the button, we load the joke. Like, the clients don't need to do anything, just to present the view controller in some way, in a navigation, in a model, whatever, right? Then these names are very generic, like session, okay, maybe it's a URL session, but data task for what? I don't know.
Yes.
So if I'm looking at this property, then I have to look where it's used and say, oh, this is like, I have to read this code, which gets me to read, oh, it's using this request, but what is this request? Well, it's a request using this URL. What is the URL? Maybe it's injected from someone. So then I'm lacking the information because data task is very generic.
Yes.
Right? So again, I can rename this and say, joke data task, or joke load data task, even better, I think. So sometimes I do these 2 steps. So
yes,
where I think of the name, and when I gain more context about what's happening, I rename it again. And for this one, I think we can call it URL session, and I don't want to make changes in other files. Just because session doesn't really say anything, like, right? A session of what? So, and another thing which I usually do is, whenever I don't want to use inheritance, I make classes final, because this helps the compiler. And I can explain this in more detail, but the short answer is it compiles faster because it can do static dispatch on the methods on this class. Whereas if we don't make it final, then it's possible that another class overrides it. Dispatch. And then we need the dynamic dispatch, which takes a longer time to compile. So by default, I make all my classes final unless I have a inheritance hierarchy, and then I use that, right? And by the way, after every step, since I have this, and I'll start doing this just to show it. So basically, what we have here is just the test that is testing that we do not crash. That's the minimum amount that I wrote. Is just, since this controller comes from a storyboard, we load the storyboard from the main bundle. The name of the storyboard is main. And then we instantiate the view controller with this identifier. I haven't changed the identifier in the storyboard, so I press Command U and run the tests, and the project builds and the test passes. It's limited test, but at least we get to compile and see that we didn't break anything. And this test, starting now, I will start to do this at every change, because it's very important to do this.
Sorry, Bogdan, but this test is not a characterization test. It's only to check if our view controller work. Because people
this is just a setup test. So like test. The minimum amount of test is just like, hey, can I load the view controller? Call init on it. And basically, to call init, we have to load it from the storyboard, because if you look at the initializer here, it takes a coder, and this can only be loaded from a storyboard. We cannot instantiate it otherwise.
Yes.
So again, and all the refactorings I did, making the class final, making these variables private, renaming the variables, all these are backed by the compiler.
Yes.
The other thing is this IB action function. So first, I don't think this function needs to be exposed, because then again, a client can come in and call tapped loaded on my class, and I don't want that. So I will make this private as well. And also I want to rename this, because tapped load, like, I'm not sure exactly what is that. And let's see if the Xcode is smart enough to know that there's an IB action in the view, in the storyboard on this one. So instead I will call it load joke button or tap. And again, I will running the tests and they pass. Okay, so now I basically hidden all the variables and this function, because this is not,
This
encapsulation.
is encapsulation,
So
it's important. Yes.
now there's no API which I'm exposing except for the ones in the base class, like view did load and stuff like that, which are available because that's how inheritance works. But none of these variables or functions are available. Let's continue. Now we look at the body of these two functions. And what I want to highlight here is the thing we were talking about earlier in the theoretical part. So we have a bunch of mixed concerns here. First of all, we have the UI, right? So we have an outlet, we have an IB action. Sorry, I just moved the code. We have this IB action, and we have the side effect where we set the text of the text view, right? So this is all UI, but we have other things here. So we have
call to the API,
a URL
parsing,
session, and especially this one, which
this
just creates the data task. This is where we run the data task. So this is networking.
Yes.
And as we discussed, this ideally should not be in a view controller.
Yes.
Then inside it, we do error handling.
Yes.
We do more error handling. So if we don't have the data, we have an invalid data error. If you don't have a response, we have an invalid response. If the status code, HTTP status code, is not between 200 and 300, then we have an invalid code response. And at the end, where all the conditions are satisfied, we basically, this would be the success case, which goes into, all of them go into the handle completion. If there's an error, we just log it on the main queue. And by the way, dispatching to main queue, threading, so a different concept.
Yes.
Error again, and
decoding,
parsing, right? So we are decoding some data into JSON, and we take that JSON value and set it back to the UI. So we just quickly recap: UI, threading, decoding, networking, error handling. I just said 5, like top ones, and maybe we can find some smaller ones. But so to me, this can get out of hand. Why? Because there are at least 5 reasons to change this class. So if we have to deal with parsing the data we get from the API, we have to change the joke view controller. If we have to change the UI, we have to change the joke view controller. If we have to change the networking style, the networking solution we have to change the same class. So it leads to Git conflicts. Like I said, it makes things hard to understand because they're now coupled between them, and ideally that shouldn't be the case. So I identified the code smells, as I said earlier, and I would really like to refactor. And I've done some refactorings, right? The easy ones, the renames, the
especially
I think handle completion is okay. Yeah, the renames. So I understand a bit better what this code does, right? But now I would not go, like I said, if I know how to write the test and I can write the tests, I would want to write tests first before I start changing this code. And this is usually a practice you've seen other developers do. So you put the tests on one side and you put the production code on the other.
Yes.
And I like to enable code coverage on my production code. So if we do that and we look at it, we see that we get through the required initializer, right? And then that's it. So there's no more tests asserting my code, calling my code, okay?
Yes.
So let's write some tests.
Yes. And the question, what kind of test?
Yes, exactly. What kind of tests? Okay.
I think that we should try first of all we have to detect our dependency, which is URL session, joke data task session. Maybe
Yes.
to test something when we tap it on the button to check if our API work, etc. And simulate
that's it.
this.
Because if we don't want to change the code, so I cannot. This is a dependency, a network dependency, but I don't want to change it because I'm not confident to change it. So the only behavior I can assert is that if I open, first of all, if I open the joke view controller, by default, it has no text on it until I press the button. So that is one case. And the other case is if I press the button and wait enough, and we'll see how we can do the wait here because there's this asynchronicity. The completion is called on async on the main queue. So we can't wait for it as it is right now because we don't know when it's going to complete. When this happens, the text is no longer empty. Those are two use cases, right? But let's start with a simple one. So I will rename my test. Well, actually, I can keep it. Like it doesn't matter, right? So I will say,
you can keep it, yes.
View did load, because when we load the view,
text view, it's empty, for example.
Yeah. Start with empty text view. Okay, so we make SUT, which is system under test. This is an acronym used in the testing community a lot. So we load the view if needed, and we need to write an assertion. So let's first get a text view from our SUT. So we can make this one throwable and say try XCT unwrap. I use this a lot just to, when I try to unwrap something, it will fail the test if that fails instead of crashing or anything. So that is very good in a testing environment. And actually I can make the screen bigger like that. And then I say, so let's take the view of our view controller and all the subviews, and I'll look for the first one where $0 is UI text view. Right? So if I'm correct, this should return actually I need to cast it. So as UI text view, and we'll deal with this complexity later. But for now, we get the view of the view controller, we get the subviews, and we look for the first one, which is a UI text view, and we cast it to UI text view. So this should give us the text view. And now we can write an assertion
to verify that
equal text view dot text equals empty string.
Yes.
And let's run the test. And it passes.
Yes.
Because we start with a empty string. So
the great thing, Bogdan, that after encapsulation, using the XA test, they help us to go to the graphic element without expose the text view.
Yes.
Which is very, very great. Very great
very
that
good
you
point.
can
Yeah.
detect. Yes.
Because here, if this wasn't private, like Walid is making a very good point,
Yes.
we can say here sut.textView.
Yes.
Right? But then this couples my test with the fact that we have a text view, right? So if I want to change that in the future, let's say to a label or whatever other component, I have to change all my tests. And that is not necessarily a good idea. I mean, of course, if I change from text view to a different class, then it breaks the first thing I wrote. But this usually what we do in these situations, and I'll show this in a minute, is to move this part, actually this one. So how we actually resolve the text view property, we extract it in a domain specific helper in the test suite. So then if we make that change, we just change in the place of the helper and not in all the tests. So that is how we protect tests from breaking changes in production. But very good point, Valid here. So I was gonna make a demonstration. So now, okay, my test passes, but ideally we want to see a test fail, just to make sure that the test is really asserting what it should be. So for this, I can simply go here and put a text in the text view and run the test again. And the test should fail. And it does.
Yes.
And it says
guarantee that
not
the
equal, a text is not equal to optional empty string, right? So now I know that I'm actually asserting that behavior. So back to the previous state, green state. Okay, now that I'm in a green state, like I said, I can do a refactoring. So I can take this whole piece and write an extension, a private extension on joke view controller. And I can call it var text view of type UI text view. Actually, I'll make it a function so it can throw. And put this code here. Return, and SUT is now self. And this is the helper I was mentioning earlier. So now I can say
we can replace now.
Yeah, I can replace SUT dot text view dot text, and I think this needs to be try.
It's a simple refactoring, but it come to simplify after that our code, our testing code, etc.
Yeah, it's very important that very important that the test setup is easy to understand. So when I'm looking at the test, I don't care how you resolve that text view. If I do, I will visit the helper. But if I don't get in the way. So in the test, there are a few styles to organize the test code. I tend to follow the arrange, act, assert technique. So basically separate 3 sections. This is the arrange, so where we create the SUT here. The act, which is the method we test, view did load, right? So it's using the UIKit API load view if needed. That's a technique that John Reed shows in the iOS unit testing book, and also you can see it in the Essential Developer program a lot by Kai and Mike. And the assert. And in the assert, we just check that the text is empty. Okay. Now I'm
Great.
going to copy this test, and I want to test for the other scenario. What was the other scenario? Where if
When
we
we call
tap
the
the
API.
button,
Yes. Yes.
we call the API, and at some point, and we'll see how we can actually detect what that point is, we set a non-empty text. Loads joke text to text view. So and now the action that we assert is no longer viewed load, but it's
tapped on the yes.
Load joke tapped, or whatever the button name is. Button, because it's a coincidence that it's the exact same name with the IB action name. It doesn't have to be. We try to express what the code is doing, not necessarily how we name the private IB action, right? So now what needs to happen is, okay, I loaded the view. I know it's, maybe we can keep this assert or not. And now I want to get the button and tap it. So to do this, I will write another function, which is very similar to this. So I will copy it and call it load button, which returns a UI button.
Yes.
And I will get the first button that I can get from the main view. And
She's
in our
the
case,
only one. She's the only one.
This is just a technique for test. Usually you can use an accessibility label or
yes, much better. Yes.
Other techniques to identify that. I'm using a simple find here.
Yes.
So I can take the button
and
I will
send
actions for touch up inside. This is the way we can simulate a tap on the button, and it needs to try because that is throwing. Okay, so now we tap the button, and this is the tricky part. So when we tap the button, we start a URL session which loads, and it's gonna complete sometimes in the future, and we just don't know when. So
this is when we try to use the expectation, etc., from the XC testing.
Yes, but to write an expectation, we need to say when we fulfill this expectation. So
it's very difficult. Yes,
one thing which I sometimes do in these cases, and it makes the code a bit uglier, but it's testable, and then we can refactor it later, is to add a non-private var on joke loaded closure.
It's completion handler to check if our code without breaking the behavior. Yes.
And I'll make it optional.
Yes.
So it doesn't mess with the initializer. We start with a nil, and if we set this on joke loaded, I want to invoke this after we have loaded the joke. So here I will say on joke loaded, just to notify
that I
my
finish.
client,
that
which is the test, that we finished. So this is the point where we want to assert, right? So now we can write an expectation. So wait for loading to complete. We have the expectation. Now we define the on joke loaded closure, where we basically just fulfill the expectation, and we wait
for the expectation.
For this expectation. This is the way to write asynchronous testing with
Yes.
XC test.
Yes.
With the newest framework, there are some more easier options, but here we can go like this. And I'll give it a timeout of 1 second. Let's say it might require longer because let's not forget this is a real network request we're making, because
we use a
I don't want to change the code, so I will assert that it does what it needs to do. So this being a volatile dependency, it might fail from time to time. So our test, this test, is not a great test because it can fail when the code doesn't change its behavior just because this volatile dependency might fail.
There's something important, Bogdan, if you
Yes.
can. A lot of developers come to, when they try to write testing, they think we should mock everything before we make testing. And now when I say you, in refactoring code, there is no problem that we make a real call to the API, etc. Because usually we go step by step. We will come to the part when we try to mock, to stabbing, to make spy, etc. For our URL session data task, etc. But first of all, because we go step by step, we should begin by making real call to expect the result, makes this techniques using completion handler and etc. to detect that our call work, etc. when we tap on the button, without worrying that we should prepare everything before we go to testing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that's a very good point. So, I mean, you have to consider the fact that you don't want to be running hundreds and thousands of tests on that API because you might break it, especially if it's your API, your company's API. But just to test, just to validate on a few occasions that your tests are working, that the code is doing what it's supposed to be doing, at this point, there is no safer option that to invoke the code as it is and assert it. This is basically, if you want, like an end-to-end test. That's what you would do in an end-to-end UI test. It's just that here we have access to loading the view controller and to tapping on a button in a more developer way rather than through the UI, right? Other than that, it's just the same principle. And what I want here is, first of all, let me copy this because I will say we can keep it like this. So we say, okay, we start, there's no text. This is like a precondition. The text view is empty. Then we load, tapping on the button, we wait for the expectation to complete. And now, if we check it, it's not equal.
Yes.
Sorry. Because it's something, and we don't know what it is. It's a joke.
It's a joke, yes.
Right? And we can actually write this even better. So we can write assert true. False is empty.
Yes.
Right? So we just say, okay, now it's not empty. What is inside, we don't know.
Yes.
So let's run the test and see. And it works.
Yes.
And if we look at the coverage indicator, we see that, okay, this code is being called and the return here is not, because the URL always exists. So we're not covering that. And even inside the data, we see there's no error here got from the API. And there's none of these cases happening, right? So our coverage is kind of limited, but in the happy path, you see here, this code is under coverage, right?
Yes.
I would say, looking at this code, this is probably the most coverage we can get without changing it. Because there's no way to fake unless we can inject at least a different URL session. There's no way to get into error states and things like that.
And that's
unless
why
you
we
stop
should
the
go to
network
faking,
or
etc., to simulate our cases.
Yeah, Yeah. So
This is
then
the
you get a
important
lot
thing.
more power. Yeah.
Yes, because we
You
can't
can put the
using
code in different
the
states.
end-to-end testing to check
Yes.
everything. Yes.
Yes. But now we have some safety. So if we look here, we have 3 tests, not a lot, but we check that we don't crash when we create an instance. And why I kept this test is because if there's an issue with, let's say, with the storyboard or anything, I want this test to fail because this test is trivial. If this test fails, I know exactly what the problem is. If this test fails, I don't know if it's maybe the loading from the storyboard, is it the loading of the text view. So as more things are covered by the test, when it fails, you don't have that granularity to know exactly where to go. So that's why some of these setup tests are good to keep, because they give you exactly the place to look at when they start failing, and this is very helpful, right? And we also cover the happy path, where it's like I tap a button, I load a joke, and I could even do a different even more complex test here, but let's say we load a joke and then we load another joke, but there's beyond point here. So now I feel a bit more confident with changing this code because I have the tests. Right?
Yes, I think we can go further to test the cancel case, maybe.
Yes, we can also, that's a good point, because we can test the cancel case. It's just that we need to expose canceling the data task somehow.
Yes.
So again, there's always, or almost always, a trade-off between testability and encapsulation. So if you enhance testability, you probably have to relax encapsulation a bit because you have to have access to something. So in our case, we have a data task. So if we want to test that the download, the canceling of that data task works as expected, we have to have a way to do that. And right now we don't. So I can make a temporary function here, which is cancel joke load.
Yes.
And I'll just do the data task,
.cancel,
which I think is optional. Cancel, right?
Yes.
Is it optional? Yeah, it's optional, right? And now we can write a test where let's use this code as example. On cancel, does not set text view.
Text view. Or text view is empty, something like that. No problem.
Yeah, maybe like this. So, okay, what needs to happen here? So we load the view. We set our data load, right? We probably don't need this assert anymore here because we have it in the previous test. We have the load button. We simulate the tap, and right afterwards, we
simulate the...
we do cancel joke load.
Yes.
And now this should be empty. And if I run just this test to see exactly what coverage we get, actually this fails because, and let's see what happens. So first we can call the cancel. Yes. So in this case, if we got an error, we are not calling the completion. So that's why we have a timeout. So we need to invoke the on joke loaded here.
Yes. Simulate
here.
Yeah. Yes.
So now I run the test again and it passes. So if you look at this, you see that it has a different path than the previous one. So here it enters the error. So we have an error got from the URL session API. and we go into the completion, and it actually completes like this.
Yes.
And
Great.
if we look here, we see the error being printed, which is cancelled. So now let's run all the tests and see the combined coverage, and it's a lot better, right? Basically, these are some errors we don't cover, but other than that, we're good because we also cover the error case, right? So very nice, very nice. Cool.
Okay. Maybe
So
we should go forward to check the other cases, the success cases, to mock, etc. Because I think until now we covered the success case, the cancel case, using end-to-end testing.
yes,
And after that, how we can be sure for the other cases that are not covered now in our production code without
yes,
mocking, without have these techniques.
yes. So right now we're in a place where we probably cannot, like I said, we cannot properly simulate this, or we can, but it's already kind of complex. So
Difficult. Yes.
Having this coverage, now I feel a bit more confident to start to break these responsibilities, to break these concerns, and then try to go into more detail with the testing, right? So the first thing I noticed when I was using this class is how difficult it is to create it, because look at the setup here. So
yes,
I have to know that, hey, this class actually goes from a storyboard. Which one is it? The main one. Where is it in the main bundle? What is the identifier? Well, this one, and so on. So to help users of the class, I
yes,
would design an API to actually have this code in production. So I will make this a static function. As you see, I copied the code, so I'm not making any mistake. I'll call it load from storyboard. It returns a joke view controller.
yes,
We have the storyboard defined. We instantiate. And yeah, we return. So we can just return here.
directly in line.
Yeah. And now my code here becomes a lot simpler, because I will still keep my make SUT, but I will return joke view controller dot load from storyboard.
But the benefit of that we use production code, the code that exists in production, to create our system under test, especially in the case of view controller, etc., without breaking the code in the production, but to simplify also our testing, our testing code. And this techniques, it's only for simplifying from your point of view, or that comes to other things that come further in the testing.
Well, it's mostly for the, like I said, I pay a lot of attention to the public API of that class.
Okay.
So if the details to create an instance of a class are scattered around the code, then it's a lot harder to make an instance of that class. So that's why I, let's say, bring all the details into that class. So now I have a function that I can call to create an instance, hiding all these details. So now a client no longer needs to go in and say, okay, where is the storyboard? Is it in a storyboard? Like all these details, because you most of the time don't need it. You just need to create an instance.
Yes.
And we basically, this is another level of encapsulation where you take details that are scattered and you add them here. So that's why I kind of made this setup, because I mean, yeah, if you're using a storyboard UI, then that's no problem, because all the view controls will be instantiated there. But if you're not, then this might be handy. So it's not like mandatory, but I
understand.
I do it sometimes.
Okay.
Okay, next thing which I want to do is to allow the URL session to be injected somehow. Because if I allow the URL session to be injected, then I can allow some changing, some we allow changing the behavior of the class, because right now the class is still very, very concrete, very rigid, right? It only works with this API. It only loads data like this. It only parses data like this. It only handles errors like this. So if I want to change any of this behavior, let's say I have a different API, or I want to load data from a cache first or anything like that, I have to go in and change the class. And that is sometimes not ideal, because you can break it. If you change it, you'll break it. So some of the principles of good design is to have code that can be changed by composing it differently, by passing different parameters to it, right?
Yes.
So I'm looking at these network details, and I would like to move these, to inject these, and later to move these to a different component.
Yes.
So
we can init.
Yeah, we can pass it through an initializer. So
yes,
if I change the signature of this initializer,
because it's always need. Yes. Okay.
And we say self.session equals session.
That's why we required another initializer.
Yeah, this one's no longer required.
Yes, that's why.
And we need another one.
So by default,
which can be
coder.
This is coder. Okay.
And I don't think that we need the coder in the line 15 or not, because we have in the required init.
Yes. Yeah, but we need to have it, otherwise we can't pass it to the other initializer.
No problem. Yes, understand. Yes.
And I want to actually pass it here, because let me comment this, and I will say I will change the way we instantiate. So there's a different instantiation with identifier, but also providing a creator. So I will copy the identifier, and let me format this, and then I'll have a creator, which is a new API, rather new, actually.
Yes.
I think it's iOS. Where is it? It's not shown here, but I think it's iOS 14 or something like that.
Okay.
Where you can actually create from a storyboard by passing a custom initializer.
Which is great.
So yeah, which is great, because then you can do proper dependency injection like we're doing here with the session, right? So we get a coder in, and let's return Joe view controller. And for this, we need to pass the session here. So session. And the coder
that is parameter, so for the completion.
Yes. Okay.
And we should update our make under test. Yes.
Yes. If we try to build, it's gonna fail, of course, because this one has no session. And already we can make a small improvement to our code because I can create a URL session
from little configuration. Yes.
Yes. And actually I can pass here an ephemeral session, which is a session that has no persistent storage.
Yes.
So
no cache.
Before, when we were using this session, we were caching between sessions.
Yes.
Now
yes.
we can make sure that every test runs in a clean environment. So here we can pass the session. And as you see, the fact that we have an make SUT function protects my 4 tests from all these detail.
Yes.
I didn't have to change the tests. I just changed the make SUT, and ideally, my test should pass, and they do. Okay?
Yes. Great.
Great.
And the great thing that I have now, I have the ability to inject session and to work after that with session to mock, etc. Okay.
Yes, there's. I think John makes a good example of that in his book, and there are other resources available on that.
Yes.
So tests are passing, right?
Yes.
Let's see. Now I want to start understanding this code. So one thing which I mentioned earlier is extract function. So one thing which we notice before we do extract function is that this code is no longer called because every time we initialize, we have a URL session. So
we are sure that we have the URL session. Yes.
Yes, because we made it a non-optional argument of our init function. And of course, you can initialize it like this, and then you won't have it. So until we are clear with that, I will probably keep this code as it is, though it's not used by the tests, because the tests go through the load from storyboard function.
Yes.
Okay, but as long as this one is implicitly unwrapped, it can be optional. So this is one of the things I was mentioning earlier, where we allow state, an invalid state, to be represented, because we basically, if we have this view controller that needs a URL session, right, to make requests, why should I allow it to exist without one? That's just creating a case that should not exist, and then we have to deal with this kind of code. But let's leave it for now, because it would be a bug to remove it so far.
Okay.
So looking at this code, because I'm trying to understand again, like, okay, we get the URL, we make a request, we make a data request from it, and then this is handling the response, right? So I can
make a small refactor to make this in little function.
Extract to a method this code, and we can call it handle response. We need to, since it's in a completion, we need to explicitly mark self, and usually Xcode makes it file private. I want to keep it private. I usually move it. I like functions to be, as Robert Martin explains, in the order of high level to low level. So if this function is calling this function, then they come one after the other.
Yes.
Right? And the other change I'm going to make is I want these named parameters for clarity. So error is error, data is data, and response is response. But I'm just copy pasting here. So now you can already start to see a bit better what is going on here. Okay.
Yes.
Let's actually, for simplicity, I will make this. Let's try to make it like this, and yeah, it's not allowing it because we need a value. So here we can say equals. Let me take this code from here because it's only used in this case.
Okay.
Whoops. Oh, we can't use the delegate itself. Can we put new here? Yeah. Okay. Because, like I said, we're not using this delegate, so I will.
Yes. Yes.
I would just use this default, let's say. So if somebody still calls this by instantiating from the storyboard, we still support it. But now it's no longer here. So now my load joke tapped is starting to look better. And by the way, I haven't run the test. So I run the test, it passes.
To be sure that everything works great.
At every step. So if we have these tests, run them as often as possible. Another practice which I do in the interest of time here, I didn't do it, to make a commit with every small change. I make a change, I run the test, they pass, I commit. Because then I can easily revert back to that state. Yeah, which is very useful. Okay, and now we have this code here and this code here. And now of course, this comes with experience, but I'm thinking about, okay, where we started from. Well, we wanted to add tests to cover this, and we covered it, right? And now I want to break some of these concerns to move it to a separate component. And
something that load data, something like this.
Something that loads data. So let's have a bit of fun here. So instead of trying to pick like a UI design pattern, which is model view model, MVVM, or MVC, or MVP, or Viper, or all the other combinations of these letters, what I sometimes do, and I'll do it here as well, is to try to think, okay, what is my code doing? My code is going to the network, to an API, loading a joke, and returning a joke, and handling the error, if any, right? So how can I name this? Well, I will name it joke loader, because it loads jokes, right? So let me make this a final class, as I said, by default. And since it's loading jokes from the remote, I would call it remote joke loader.
Yes, because they come from the API.
Yes. And I want to inject this into my class. So then I can move code to the joke loader.
Yes.
So let's do it like this.
Joke loader, which is
joke loader.
Remote joke loader.
Yes. And now both my initializers want
I try to replace maybe the URL session with the joke loader.
I'll do that in very tiny steps.
Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, because we still have this behavior here required, I will actually make this implicitly unwrapped optional.
Yes, okay.
Just for the time being. So now I'll actually start with the joke loader. and equal joke loader, and naming wise,
Yes.
while the class is named remote joke loader, the property is joke loader, because at the level of the view control, I don't care how I'm doing the loading. It's just that we load something.
Yes.
And we'll probably, from experience, we'll put a protocol, an abstraction between these two. But for now, for now, simple steps. So now we inject the joke loader.
Maybe the compiler can help us to fix it.
Yeah. Oops.
Yes.
And to format this, put it like this because it's easier to read. Okay.
Right.
So I try to run my tests and they fail because I don't have a joke loader here.
Yes.
Okay. And we make a joke loader.
And we inject him.
Yeah.
And for people who see this practical, we need their comments, Bogdan, and how they can add the comments in the YouTube channel to have their appreciation, maybe their ideas of the refactoring process that we can improve our work. Yes.
Yes, please do that. I'm looking forward to hearing feedback on this. Yes. But all I'm doing here is just looking at the code, trying to explain it better. I'm not following any pattern. I'm not.
Yes.
Some things, of course, are from experience, like the encapsulation I did in the beginning and everything, but everything else is just common sense, trying to name things as they are, and to have the tests back me up, right?
Yes.
So again, tiny step, I just injected an empty loader, does nothing, right? So now I want to move some of the behavior to my remote joke loader. And the technique is usually to move code somewhere else, adapt it, like you copy it, you put it there, you adapt it, and then you make the component you're adapting call the new code instead of the old code. That's kind of how you do it. Yeah.
Okay.
So looking at this code,
I think that we can go with the URL, the call to the request, something like that, and the resume for the loader, because this is the role of the joke loader, to call the API with the URL of the joke, and after that we can handle the response, or maybe for my point of view, I think about that, but we have some dependency to the joke loader data task cancel, etc.
Yes.
Which makes things not easy to do.
Yes.
And the question, we should have this joke load data task, or we can delete this line of code.
Which one?
Because I don't know. I don't think that we need to have this joke load data task every time when we type it on the load joke.
Yeah, we do, because that's how we load it. Like we create a new data task that loads from the network, and it calls back the.
To be sure that we cancel any previous.
This one.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, let me think about it. Because again, but legacy code, so I'm not entirely sure.
Yes. To keep this idea.
You do a cancel, you do a load. Like in theory, if you have no task, then this cancel at the beginning is redundant.
Yes.
And I'm sure that if I remove it, the test will still pass.
Yes.
But can that guarantee that we have the same behavior, I'm not sure.
Yes. Yes.
So again, it's a thing to really think about. For now, I think we can remove it, as you said.
To simplify the work of our
Yes.
joke loader. This is
Yeah.
this is my point of view. Yes, but
Yes.
I'm sure I have the same idea with you that we should not make any change in our production code without secure that.
Yes. So I will copy this code.
Okay.
And try to move it to my remote joke loader.
Okay.
So let's see how this goes. So I'll make a function here. I will call it load joke, which, let's take a look at the signature again. So it, of course, it needs a URL session. And I will actually start with that. So
yes.
Again, just to avoid mistakes, sometimes I forget it too, but this is the way to go. So copy and paste beats typing at any moment. So if possible, do that. And now we can create an initializer. Fortunately, it didn't generate the right one, but we injected the URL session here. And if I run my tests, I see that we need to provide the URL session. So I pass the session here.
So a real URL session.
Yes,
Usually,
the same
yes.
session.
Same session.
And now let's see about this load joke function. So what should it do? Well, it should basically start the request,
yes.
and when it finishes, it should call a callback with
and the
this
callback
signature.
Didn't exist in the loader. It exists now in the view controller.
Yes. So I will call this joke completion. And here you cannot have named parameters in a closure definition. And I'll make this completion, which is escaping
of type
load joke completion.
Yes. This is great techniques to simplify codes, etc.
And now I copy my code here. Like I said, so I copy it, I paste it, and I let the compiler drive me. So
to help me.
There's no joke load data task. So I copy this one.
Okay.
And there's no handle response, but
yes,
there's the completion here, which should have the same signature. Yeah.
Yes.
It's just that it's unnamed, so it removed the labels.
Okay.
Right? Okay. I mean, if I run the test, I'm not invoking this behavior, so it should still be good, but as you see, it's not called. So now, let's try to call it. So in my function, I will do self. I'm usually writing self first. Dot joke loader. Dot load joke. And the completion is self dot handle response.
Yes.
And
great.
First, let's just comment this. Run my test, and they fail.
No problem.
Good. Okay. So the only thing that's failing is the cancel.
Yes.
Why does the cancel test fail? Because we're canceling the data task on the view controller.
Not in the loader.
Yes, not the one
yes.
from the loader.
Yes.
So I will also copy this function here to my loader, sorry.
Yes.
And here I need to say loader.
Instead of
So to make this happen, I need to return the loader. So remote
to
joke
have
loader.
control on the loader to cancel the
Yes.
And this is the techniques using our factory make system under test code to return
Yes.
tuples of yes.
So here we just have like this.
Without
and
parameter, I think. Yes.
I will do it like this because in this test we don't use it.
But in the
And
test
here, whoops.
we should have this. Yes.
Yes, here. Well, joke loader. And here we say joke loader. Run the test again. Passing. Okay.
Passing,
so
great.
we moved the code from this load joke tapped.
And we can delete now the code.
Yes.
Yes, because we are sure that we keep the same things.
We're no longer calling this function, which we mentioned in the beginning. It's temporary, so I can remove this as well.
Yes.
Which is great. Okay, test passing. Cool. So, next step.
Now we are with much less couplers with our element. We have a component which is the loader that handle communication with the API, networking,
Yes.
etc. Text view controller or joke view controller, it's always handling parsing data, etc. But we'll maybe after that make some component to handle parsing, etc.
Yes,
and
but we just moved the networking part. So everything else
yes.
is
For
still
people that
in the view
see
controller.
us or watch us.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, one thing to do here, which I like to do, is to inject this URL. So instead of just having it hard-coded, I will copy it. I will.
Yes. But yes, I
declare
understand
it
you.
Here.
Yes. At this moment, maybe to speak about a loader, remote loader, without be related to a joke, because the URL, this URL related our remote joke loader with the joke API. But now we can inject every type of URL.
Yes, that's it. So I injected it. I made it a default parameter. So the clients, in this case, just the tests, are not changed.
Didn't break, yes.
But instead of having a hard-coded URL here, I can just say self.url.
Yes.
I run my tests and it still passes.
Yes.
Or it can be a var or something, but I think this is okay. It's important that after you make some changes to the code, you can refactor right away. So I spotted that I was dealing with this 7 lines function, and I jumped in and cleaned it up a bit. Okay.
Yes.
Or we can pass it as a. It depends on who should drive the URL. It's okay to pass it as we did via the constructor. We could pass it to the load joke function.
Yes.
It depends on the use case, right?
Yes.
Now, next step. I have this handle response function.
Yes.
And I'd like to move this to the loader as well, to decouple it from the controller. And listen, if it's big enough, it can go to a different component. We don't necessarily need to to put it in the loader.
Yes.
Right now, it's okay because we're dealing with basically with errors got from the network response. So those kind of belong together. But if it grows out enough, like this can become its own component. So let's see if we can do this. So again, I'm gonna copy actually my whole function, and I'll try to fit it in here. So let's see how we want to do this. So in the end, we should invoke a completion that takes either an error or data.
Yes.
Right? So I no longer want this URL response here. And actually, let's not change the existing code first. Let's just deal with this one. So it's in even simpler steps. So I move the code here, and now I need to invoke the completion. And for this, I can just call a completion, or which is again escaping.
The same
It
signature.
takes an error, almost.
Okay.
No URL response.
Okay.
To avoid. And we'll call the completion here.
Because in every completion we didn't return the URL response. That's why for people that watch us to understand that.
Oh yeah, okay. So here it's actually, if you look at it, so handle completion, it's called error. Super misleading, but it's actually a string.
Yes.
So now if I want to be,
I should pass the string instead of error.
Yeah, we actually it was like this. So it's error and data.
Yes.
So this might. Okay. And I think. Oh, okay. Yeah, so it doesn't matter. If I do this, okay. So then I will just say string and data. And this seems to be okay. Now I would like to call self-handle response. And let's make this unnamed so we don't change the signature here. So let me delete it, and I will say self.handle response. And we need to pass in the completion. Right? So in order to do this, I will now change the signature of my completion. And completion. I'm just forwarding this completion here. And
great.
now I cannot call handle response, but I can call handle completion here. Okay. And I run the tests. And they pass.
Yes.
So now we were able to, as you see, this code is no longer called because it now lives in the loader.
In the joke loader.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
We know that it's not the responsibility of the joke loader to do okay, there's responsibility to handle the different states code, etc. but we keep the parsing in the text view in the bottom, which is maybe a responsibility of other components. But for your point of view, the responsibility of the joke loader is to make the code, to handle the different response, handle data, etc., and to pass this information until now to the text view controller. And after that, maybe we have another component after refactoring.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So this is kind of the end goal of our refactoring here. So we now have this handle completion function, which I'd like to partially move to the loader.
Okay.
We can't move everything because here we have this side effect. So
Dependency
when
to
we
text
have a
view.
message,
Yes.
yes. But almost everything else, and also the on joke loaded, almost everything else can be moved to the loader.
Okay. Yes. Maybe a function that return this information, that the text to the unjoke, and that's all.
Let's see it.
Let's see.
And again, listen, I'm not changing. Listen, I kept the same name, right?
Yes.
I kept the same code almost inside. I'm just fitting
also.
in. So
Yes.
as few changes as possible to avoid making big mistakes.
Yes.
This is very important. Okay, so now we have handle completion.
And we have problem
There's no
because the techniques to check, yes, to check that the completion, the joke loaded in our testing.
Yes, but we don't need that because we'll leave this to the
Yes.
view controller.
Yes.
And it's actually I'm going to keep it because here I can get another completion
That return this information. Okay. Yes. It's okay.
and what we want to pass here is a string optional because this is the message we get. It's either nil or a message. Okay, so in this case I will just invoke the completion with nil, and in this case I will invoke the completion with the message and delete these other side effects.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Now so this function expects a completion. Okay, so here instead of calling completion, let me migrate this one by one. So if we call self dot handle completion, where the error is error like this and data is data, so I could have just renamed it, and I need another completion here, which is this one. So I will actually let's do this in 2 steps. So I'll comment this code. First of all, this completion here is also of this type.
Yes.
That's so if I run the test, it should pass. Cool. Always run the test when you're unsure. So now what happens? We get a load joke, we get a completion in, we pass it to the handle response, and now we want to pass it forward to the handle completion. And I can format this a bit better. So I need to inject it. So I will change this to be just a string. So I get the completion in, I pass it.
You should delete now the data. Okay.
I'm doing this. So completion is completion. I delete this. And replace all of them. I could have passed like a two-step thing where I do one by one, but then I need to pass two completions at the same function, and it might be very hard to follow. So, oops, I'm doing it like this.
No data, I think.
No, I just need to remove these.
Okay.
So now it compiles. Okay. And of course it's gonna fail because
we didn't call. Yes, correctly.
Now the completion is it's passing a message in. So when we get the message, I want to this used to be this one, right? So let me actually copy the code. So if message else,
we can directly get the message. Otherwise, only the call to the completion.
Yeah, but since we call this completion on the error case, I will just move it outside and get rid of the duplication.
Yes.
Even though, again, from how many steps we do it, we could have done it first duplicated as it is here, and then refactor it. But for the sake of time, and I run the test and they pass. And now I can get rid of this entire function.
Yes. You can check the coverage now?
Yes, coverage is on the right. So besides this method that is not called, my view controller is fully covered.
Yes,
and my view model has the same coverage as before. But now I can start to take the loader,
the control of the URL session, data task, etc.
And exactly, and put the URL session using the URL protocol stubbing techniques in different states, in error states.
Yes,
but that is probably subject to a longer session. We are already a very long time into this one. So
yes.
A few points which I'd make here. Now we're free to refactor this more. Like one thing we can do is to extract a protocol here.
Yes.
A joke loader protocol with
the same signature.
This API.
Yes. Yes.
And make this conform. Let's see if this works. I make it conform. I can delete this from here. And it should pass. Now I can make my view controller depend on the joke loader
Of
instead
abstraction
of a
instead of
remote joke loader.
concrete thing.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the question is why? Well,
Yes.
because this allows me, as you've seen, the refactoring now was kind of easy, but this allows me that in the test, instead of passing a real remote joke loader, I can mock it. Yeah. So I can do a final class, just like a very basic mock joke loader, implements joke loader. The compiler will help me and tell me what functions I need to implement. And
I can maybe begin with the sample completion, no, or without anything. Yes.
Yeah, I can capture the completion, invoke it later. I can record a message that the using, I don't know, some people do it like this, like load joke called count,
like a spy.
0.
It's a spy. Yes.
Yeah, this is a spy, exactly. So if we do it like this, it's just a spy, and we do load count
+1,
and now we can, of course this won't work, but almost.
Yes.
Yeah, actually it's not working because we're not completing, but if we complete with, we need a value here, so
load joke completion. Yes. Yes. Yeah,
the cancel case does not work, but the other ones do. So this was just a,
maybe we need to add the cancel to the protocol, etc., something like that, and simulate
this. But
yes.
Session. Okay.
It's great.
We're back to green. We're not back to green because I forgot to uncomment this one.
Yes.
That's one thing we can do.
Yes.
Another thing we can do and is to, let's say, replace this parsing with codable. With codable and extract it to a separate component if we want. Yeah. We can extract it to a mapper.
Yes.
We can improve this, but everything can be done. So there's many levels which we can go. Everything is done with tests, and we do save small steps, as you've seen. They could have been even smaller, but sometimes for interest of time, I kind of merged.
I think it's great, Bogdan.
But yeah,
it takes times because now we have 3 hours of discussion and 2 hours of practical, which is the most important practical times in our history in Swift Academy. Great things. Maybe we need another session to finalize this. And really thank you. I think that people who see this practical thing have a lot of knowledge now about some techniques of refactoring, real techniques without in the real world, real project, etc. that we find. This example, it's in UI kit. Maybe people said, okay, but now we didn't find code like this using MVVM. But the principle, the techniques that when you have legacy code like this, how you can go step by step by renaming, by create little function, by not focus only on Vapor, MVP, MVVM, etc. But try, okay, how I can inject a new component like the loader, etc. How I can make things using completion handler like you do, and how after that I can using ThinkLeaks abstraction using the protocol loader, etc. I think it's great.
Yes, and I was gonna just double down on, just look at our new IB action.
Yes.
API is just using the collaborator, the loader. It loads a joke. We get the nil nullable response. If we get a response, we set it, and that's it.
I think it's great.
Even this one can go away after a few refactorings when we start to test with a different joke loader. But again, many steps. You don't have to always go to the perfect solution.
Yes.
Any improvement is good. So, but I think now with this separation and with further separations, like you can start to see concerns which are separate. So now the view controller is only doing view controller stuff, right? And loader is now the loader is doing a bit more stuff. So a bit has more than one responsibility because it's doing the networking, is doing error handling, and is doing parsing and this threading. So we made some improvements. It still can be improved further. So even such a small example can be improved a lot. We can, for instance, instead of returning a string, we can create a type here. So that's one thing I usually also do, which is the resolution to the anti-pattern called primitive obsession. So primitive obsession is using primitives everywhere. String is a primitive. So instead of using a string, we can define a joke, and the joke can have a text or body or something which is a string.
Right? Using the string directly with the primitive. Okay.
Yeah. So now here I can, instead of using a string, I can wanna make a joke actually, and this will actually, I think this one's also. So here we can add a joke where the text is the message.
What is the benefit of using structure or this pattern instead of using the simple message, simple strings or int, something like that?
Yes, I can explain that.
Okay.
Just let me make sure I didn't break anything.
Yes. Great.
So one thing is just understanding the code. So when I have a string, I don't know what the string is. It can be anything, right? So when we work with that API, you have to have some kind of a mind mapping, and I might accidentally, I don't know, pass the URL string as the joke string. They're both strings, so nothing is stopping me. So this is a very important principle to represent data as you want. So for instance, I can create here a custom initializer that checks that the joke has all the parameters it needs, or that it's valid or something, or that it's funny maybe. I don't know.
Yes. Okay.
But this all belongs to the domain of the joke. So
make more context.
Try to protect myself. Yes. These are the models in the Onion architecture, which are at the root, in the most inner circle that every other layer depends on. These add a lot of value to our code because when you work with them, you can have specific APIs. You can, I don't know, like describe the joke as you want, or make it into something else with a custom mapper, but it's very explicit, right? Now I cannot pass anything else here that's not a joke. So that's very limiting. It's like how Apple did the URL type, right? It's not a string. It comes from a string, but it is a URL. And URLs are different. You can do different things. You can use different APIs with URLs. Same with us. So it's, again, a whole domain, but data representation can help so much because now it's clear that all I'm doing here, like what does the joke loader do? Well, it loads a joke, right? It completes with an optional joke. So maybe there's no joke, or it can be a result of joke and error, right?
Yes.
For a better data representation, we can make that refactoring.
Much context, etc.
Yeah, but it's more explicit. Otherwise,
yes.
it's like
yes.
You don't know, right? I think this adds to the readability, to encapsulation, because as I said, some operations make sense on a joke but not on any text, or vice versa. And you don't want to be mixing these. Same with IDs, with all. That's why just go and research primitive obsession. It's basically, as the name says, an obsession to use primitives everywhere instead of using your own models and types. So yeah.
Thank you. It's great.
Yeah.
I think that we come to the end of this great podcast with you. Thank you very much, Bogdan. 3 hours and 15 minutes of discussion with great topics. I think that we should divide the session for theoretical part and the practical part, because people need to have first of all the theoretical part. We'll discuss that after the podcast. But thank you. Great topics. And maybe we will share all these commits to the community, the project that you forked from the NetFox, and all the commits that people can understand after that, all the things we are using, URL protocol stubbing, how the joke loader will be improved, etc. But for the lack of time, we cannot continue with 4 hours, or we cannot do that. I let you the final to finalize the podcast. What do you think about refactoring? Some advices for people, for developers. You make a lot of advices, real practical things, and I let you finalize the podcast.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we definitely went through a lot of things here. I would say don't get too intimidated. It's everything has a learning curve.
Yes.
And just learn what makes sense. So, and try not to think in terms of, at least I try this, not to think in terms of patterns, of trends, what people are doing, what people are using. Like I write the best code when I just think about, okay, why am I trying to do? Like,
yes,
what's the outcome I want? What is the readability? Because this is something I check. How does the code read after I'm done refactoring it? Does it say the story I wanted to say, or does it show details that it shouldn't? Things like that. And for people that care about their career and want to get somewhere, I think ambition is very important. And having like I mean, it may sound silly, but having like a plan, like where do you want to get? What is the level you want to get to? Because there's so many things. Like there's not a lifetime enough to learn everything that can be applied to iOS development only, not to mention other areas of development. So just decide for yourself, like, what do you want? Because if you don't have that ambition, it's fine. Like I'm not judging anyone. It's just that results and effort are usually related. So if you want to have like a great career, if you want to work with the best companies, if you want to, I don't know, learn, and like I explained with my example, just feel excited about what you're doing at work with your colleagues, then
yes,
take control and start to drive the learning you're doing, not to respond to the latest blog, the latest I don't know, book and stuff like that, but have some kind of an idea, like a plan, like, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, and talk to people like, hey, what did you learn? What did you do? Like, how did you get there? I think these are these
It's
are very
important to talk to
important
people,
to,
to
yeah,
talk,
to drive
yes,
that.
to talk to people that are better than you,
Yeah.
because there is usually someone that is better than you, and you should learn from him. And it's important to be humble, to have this idea to improve. And after that, if you want to be a great company, technical company, as you said, you should make efforts. You should make
Yes.
sacrifice. If you can say, yes.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Walid, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
inviting
Thank
me.
you, Bogdan. Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Thank you. Bye.